Okay, well, and just like that, we're live on YouTube and Twitter. And in just a moment, I'm going to there we go. I'm going to click this button and go live on Instagram too. Look at that. How fancy are we, Jim?
So fancy. Just absolutely the fanciest.
All right. Jim, thank you for joining me. Appreciate you being here tonight. I'm looking forward to our chat. I talk with a lot of different people. I've been doing this for a little bit more than a year now. It's been pretty fun. Like sometimes I know people a little bit, sometimes I don't. So I'm excited to get the opportunity to kind of get to know you. I was like kind of looking through some of your answers on my questionnaire and finding your like YouTube videos of you being a total metalhead like years ago.
Like, oh my gosh. First of all, I don't remember at all what was on your questionnaire, so
yeah, no worries.
It's actually really funny. But yes, I mean, yeah, I used to do a lot of metal and I still love it and I still make music. I just don't, put it out there as much. It's mostly just for me now.
Sure. Yeah. So there was one video in particular that was like 12 or something years ago. It was a little bit ago. And I think that you were rocking some serious dreads at the time. Was that you or was that another guy in the band?
No, that wasn't that couldn't have been me. I never had dreads, so it might have been a video where maybe it was related to me or maybe something like that. I have a few friends that I used to play with that had dreads, so maybe it was one of those guys. So.
Fair enough. But it did seem like I think that you were you were the vocalist on at least one of the bands, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you were given some good screams in that, huh?
Yeah. I did put a whole lot of grit into those vocals, I would say.
Love it, dude.
Getting out all the angst,
It was like that was a little bit of a trip, like seeing that, because like your author photo now, you got the glasses, you look kind of like like almost mild-mannered, you know what I mean? I felt like you Clark Kent Superman to me right then.
Well, I mean, maybe I did. Maybe
you did.
But
yeah,
it's not intentional,
Oh, that's funny. So, yeah, I one of my questions was I love to regale our audience of all the different works you've done. And so of course you've written The Seventh Cadence, Strangers in the Promised Land, The Advent of Winter Anthology, which I've got up here somewhere. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
You're also a developmental editor. You've been involved with music with some different bands, and those were the ones that I was like, finding these videos of you, which was pretty awesome in punk rock. You've done music production, which is pretty. Oh, that might have been the one. Maybe it was the Dirty, Filthy, Rotten, or Action in the Skyline. That was with the dreads. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Action in the Skyline. Oh yeah, there was a guy with dreads in that.
Yeah.
But
you're also a podcast editor and a YouTube editor as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Bro, you're just doing like all the things, huh?
Yes, and none of it well. Yeah, I do too many things. I should probably slim it down, but I get bored, so I like to try a lot of things.
We are kindred spirits, my friend. Because I try to do some YouTube. I do the interviews. Sometimes I like the idea of doing other videos, but like I don't have time. I've had actually a fan be like, you should turn your interviews into a podcast, which is probably a good idea, but it's like, that seems daunting. Even though I've done a podcast before, I don't know what, but then of course I'm trying to do that whole writing thing, that takes a little bit of time, right?
Yeah. I think writing is what I'm slowest at. So I'm
a
very slow paced writer. So if anybody's watching that is waiting for my stories, I'm sorry, they're coming.
They're coming.
Not be a forever thing.
I will not George R.R. Martin you, I promise.
No, I will not do that. I can promise you that.
Right. Briefly, what's up, Tim? Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Got some folks in the chat. So, man, I want to kind of talk about all this different stuff because, I mean, again, you've done all these neat things. Let's take it back and let's run through some of your work chronologically. And one of the things you said was that your high school's music program won a Grammy 2 years in a row. What?
Yeah,
what?
In there?
You put that in there?
I just
Yep.
dropped my resume in. Like, did I get excited?
I think. Well, I'm here for it, dude. Because like I was looking at this and I'm like, bro, Jim is insane. Like Jim is.
Yeah.
This is cool. So
it wasn't just me. Obviously, it's my high school's music program.
yeah.
So I was a part of it. So I mean, I'm not gonna say I carried them on my shoulders, but maybe.
Sure.
But yeah, so I went to a school called Davidson Fine Arts, and we took our fine arts very seriously. So we practice a lot. I spent a lot of time singing and doing musical theater and whatnot. And
I was a theater kid too.
yeah. See, I went into musical theater because I wanted a little more diversity than just like doing choir and music theory and piano and everything. And I thought, you know what? You know who are all the teachers' pets? The theater kids.
Fair.
And it's the perfect crossover because musical theater is just like the perfect crossover for me. I realized that acting isn't for me. It's fun. I like doing the background stuff. I did some roles. I got to play Daddy Warbucks as Annie and Amy. But,
nice. That's pretty cool.
That incredibly nerdy teenage me trying to pull off Daddy Warbucks is probably the most hilarious things you possibly could have ever seen.
I am here for that image. Yeah.
But yeah, so back then, I don't know if they still do it, but the Grammy Foundation has an award for the best high school music program. And that is one of those things that I don't think a lot of people know about, but I guess maybe it's a thing that some kids in high school know about. And when they were doing it, we won one year. I think that was the year I was in 10th grade. And then the next year we won. And so after that, they made a rule that if you win, you can't submit for 4 years because they were like, maybe we're getting the same group of kids.
Yeah.
And they don't know who it is. It's like a blind audition tape. So it's not like they can tell who it is. I mean, maybe they could, but so because of that, they had to make a rule just for us because they were like, this isn't fun if one school keeps winning because they're the same kids over and over. So, which I think is a fair rule because there's a lot of schools. So it would be nice to spread it around.
Sure.
Yeah,
That's so you can like fairly you can legitimately say Grammy award winning Jim Wilbourne, huh?
I don't like that. Again, it was my school's music program, not me. So, but yeah, basically, yeah. I'm going to start saying that now. I'm going to put it on a book.
Yeah. You'll what I mean, there's of course, there's the EGOT, right? What the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, right? What do you have for like Grammy and then like Nebula, Locus, Hugo? We need to make one.
We need an acronym for that.
Right? You could be a trailblazer, bud. You think
somebody come up with a good acronym for that. And so
yep. Grammy, Locus, Nebula, Hugo, GLNH. All right, get to it, Tim. Let us know.
We need some vowels.
Yeah. I don't know. We gotta insert something.
We'll throw in an Oscar. Just
sure. Why not? Yeah. Like Best Picture Oscar, right? Just from the adaptation. Genius.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you got into that because you were looking for some diversity from choir. It sounds like you were doing some choir before that. Like it sounds too like you've been a bit of a musician for a long time. Was that your initial sort of creative spark as music?
Music. I mean, honestly, music and storytelling were both
really
big when I was very young. Music, I started playing piano very young, singing a lot very young, writing my own songs very young. And outside of that, I gained my love of reading around the same time. And, my natural instinct whenever I love something creative is to try to do it myself. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's because I love something so much. It's almost my way of interacting with the art form
Yeah.
by, and it makes me appreciate it way more when I do.
Right.
Because
Right.
I can see all the hard work that goes in, and I see it from a completely different angle after that. And sometimes it gets ruined. But I was drawing before then, and I realized at a pretty young age that drawing was not for me. I got to a point where I was like, I want to be better than this, but I'm not willing to put in the work to get better. This is the end for me. I will put this aside. I almost wish I hadn't, because now that I'm writing a lot of fantasy, I mean that's a skill I really wish I had.
Right.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so music was a big part of my life. I did hyper focus on music as high school came around,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up going to college for music, and I did that for a little while. Then I dropped out of college to be in a band, and from then I was in a band, various bands, and did some light touring for about 10 years. So yeah, and then that was my whole music thing. So yeah.
So if we're gonna say Grammy Award winning Jim Wilbourne, the college dropout rock star. That's your title now. Just so you know.
Awesome.
I like it.
I'll
That's
claim
pretty rad, right? That's a pretty rad story. It sounds. Yeah, I said in my questionnaire again. I said that my question is, in my experience, most creatives have had many day jobs before they reach much success. Can you list all the jobs you've had? And you just listed audio interface manufacturing and testing.
Mhm.
So like, has that pretty much it's been like semi-touring bands and then audio interface work?
Yeah. I mean, yes, exactly. And then
That's
after
pretty
I
rad.
stopped doing that, I've just been working for myself. So I don't have a day job per se anymore. So
Ah,
I've only had one real day job, and
that's
that
rad.
was that. And I did that for a very long time. And I did it because I just needed like something stable while I,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
did, because you're not always playing gigs,
mm-hmm.
So, but after that, after I left that job, which was in 2019, I've been self-employed since then. So that's been nice. I really enjoy that, which is why I have so many other jobs that I do now, because I am self-employed now. So
Right. Yeah, I get it. I'm a business owner and I get to wear all the hats, which is super
yeah,
fun.
right.
So, uh, sorry, train wreck of train of thought. But you've been doing that, and you've been self-employed for 5 years now. I'm
Mhm.
assuming, and I could be way off base. Tell me if I'm wrong. But well, no, I mean, like, you're doing other things besides just the writing. You're doing the podcasting editing. You're doing YouTube editing. So
Mhm.
like a big collection of these is what pays the bills, huh?
Exactly. I do that. I do some patient care work. I do a little bit of that, where I help the elderly, usually have them live with me, in like personal care home kind of setting as well. I might be phasing out that part, but I might be doing it or rather a lot less than I was doing it the past 4 years.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, that's what pays the bills. I mean, I just do as many things that I have as I just try to figure out what my skills are and try to apply them as well as possible without actually, going to an actual office. Um,
Yeah. Or I'm with you, man. Just trying to avoid the regular day job. As long as I can put it off, it's a success.
and it's nothing against people who want to have a day
No,
job, or
no.
or who have one in general, whether or not you
Yes.
want it or not. I mean, it's
Yes.
just, I found my way out, and I'm like, uh-oh, like if I go back now, like I don't think I could function correctly anymore.
Right.
So
Same.
yeah.
And kudos to you. Like that, I've my mom lives with me since she had a stroke like Ooh, 7 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Oof. Well, since you had a stroke and then since my dad died, I guess that was
Um,
5 years ago.
right.
And like, so that's a thing that takes some time. And then like my grandmother before she passed, I was helping take care of her a little bit. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a small sense of some of that work. That's some intense work that you must be doing. Kudos to you for doing it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's actually to me, I find it's kind of nice because it it almost feels it feels kind of good to get like help other people
Mm,
in a way that's very hands-on. Um,
yes.
I like that kind of work. Um, and it's not it's honestly it sounds worse to some people than it is in that
Sure.
because to me like since I tend to take care of them either in my home or I'll go out to their home and help them if if they don't have anybody or something like
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
that gives me a whole lot of freedom to work my own schedule and do my own thing. So I mean I really appreciate that. So it's not it's actually kind of a nice lifestyle if you're willing to do that kind of thing. Some people can't deal with certain things
Yeah.
like helping with hygiene and whatnot. That can be hard and challenging. There can be lifting involved, but if you've got it in you, get out there and see if there's you can get like a nursing aide job at like a hospice or something like that can be incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
And you get to meet a lot of families sometimes too and help them during a really hard time. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we need people doing that in the world. I'm glad you're doing it. Do your patients know that you're Grammy award winning college dropout rock star?
No, I try to keep all of my non healthcare related stuff like completely away from them. Like I don't want them to know about any of that. I so I work with
They would hear you like your scream singing and be like, "Oh, Jim seemed like such a nice boy. I had no idea." Right?
exactly. I was like, no, I'm not going to share that with you guys. Some of them sometimes they find out that I've written books, and I'm like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, like I write fantasy stuff about dragons and stuff. And they're like, who's a good writer? Stephen King. It's like, yeah, Stephen King is a great writer.
That is true.
But I have not met Stephen King, and they get this like disappointed look, and it's like, well,
You're right. You're like, I'm willing. He hasn't called. Right?
yeah. As soon as he calls, I'll hang out with him.
Yeah.
Make it
Right.
happen. So,
Steven, we're waiting. Yeah.
yeah.
I hear you. That's funny. Um. Okay, so I want to talk about probably first podcasting editing and then video editing and the developmental editing and then you're writing yourself. Before I get into all that, I want to talk one more kind of a personal thing. Some fun story. Again, I asked in my questionnaire, like, hey, do you have any fun stories? And you said you have a story you share with people called the prodigal cell phone. And I've got to hear
Oh
this, Jim.
my God. Okay. That's funny. So I kind of finessed the story to its best form on my newsletter. And that's one of the emails I like to send people
I love it.
on my newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see if I can. So here's the thing.
Yes.
I went to school in Boston for music, and
Nice.
I had this friend at the time. His name was Jesse, and being the huge metal and rock fan that I am, we went to as
Mm-hmm.
many concerts in and around Boston as we could. On
Mm-hmm.
the weekends, when we were in school and whatnot. And sometimes even during the week because we're right there. We're in Boston. They're playing. Let's just go do it. So there's this place in Alston, which is right next to Boston, called the ICC Church. And they used to do a lot of concerts, like a lot of underground rock shows there. And so we went there to see a couple bands. Doesn't matter who they are. I probably can't even tell you who they are anymore. That's not the important part of the story. The fun part of the story is that when we got there, I decided that I was going to crowd surf. Now, that was so amazing because I think I had only crowd surfed like once before, but it was at a very small venue. And if you know what a crowd surfing at a small venue is like, it's not like crowd surfing at like a packed room. So this was a packed room. I got to seriously crowd surf. It was amazing. I loved the bands. And one of the bands was actually local that was playing, and they were really good. And I walked up to the booth, and me and Jesse, we walked up there and we're like, hey, how's it going, guys? Like, we go to school around here. Like, you guys were amazing. And they were like, oh, yeah, thanks. Like, hey, do you guys want to come to our practice space after and jam? And I was like, yeah, let's do that. And so anyway, everyone was packing up at the end of the concert, and we were getting ready to leave to go, meet up. They gave us the address of the place, and I patted around for my cell phone, and I couldn't find it. Like, where's my cell phone?
Oh no!
So,
No!
Oh, I crowd surfed. It must have fell out while I was crowd surfing. So I'm like walking around the venue, like it's clearing out, like there's the floor space is opening up, and I'm looking, and like I don't see it anywhere. I'm like looking like every single nook and cranny I cannot find it. I go up to the venue. This is going somewhere, by the way. This is one of those stories that's amazing because it seems like it's not going anywhere, but it totally goes somewhere. So I'm like, I go up to the promoter, and I'm like, hey, I lost my cell phone. It's a little flip phone. If you find it, here is, I gave him my friend Jesse's number. Here's his number. Can you just call? And like, I really need to get that phone back. This was I was in college. It was not my phone. My mom gave it to me to be at college, so it's like, oh man. So I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing I can do. Let's go to the band practice room. So we go and we walk there, and it takes a while to get there. And we get there, we're outside. It doesn't really seem like anybody's around. So we knock on the door for a while, and nobody comes down. We're like, did they give us like a fake address? like you get like somebody's number and they give you a fake number.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you could come. And then like I'm like recontextualizing the conversation.
Right.
Is that a cool conversation? Like, did I actually make a connection with them, or are they like, oh my god, these kids are sloppy?
Was I a creeper? Yeah.
Exactly. So we're like, okay, well, we stood out there for like an hour, and we're like, this isn't happening.
Oh man.
And so we walked to like KFC. We got something to eat. We were like, okay, there's nothing to do. I lost my cell phone. Like,
this night
kind of
sucks.
felt like it was like a bummer ending to the night. So we get on the Green Line. It's like the public transportation that goes back, that goes through Boston. And we hop on a train. This is basically like the last train of the night. It's like 2 a.m. almost. And it's been hours since the concert. We've been walking around trying to, find something to do. It's been like 3 hours since the venue closed. And we get on the T. The T is completely empty. We hop on, and we get on a random car and on the train. We sit there, and my buddy Jesse, he got stickers from the concert. Little, stickers with the back, and it peels off, and it's that white little wax paper. And he kind of leans over and starts ripping the wax paper like this, and like dropping little tiny pieces on the ground. Of course, he stuck the sticker on the back, advertisement for the band. And we're doing that, and the T stops. And then one guy gets onto the T. Our car, whole T is open. He gets onto our car. Kind of a sketchy looking dude, but he gets onto our car. He comes in, and he sits a few rows in front of us. And we kind of look at each other like, okay, this is weird. Didn't have to get on our car, but whatever. And so Jesse continues tearing the piece of paper. He's tearing it. and we're talking about the concert and how cool it was, and he's tearing a piece of paper. And the guy turns around and looks at us, and he kind of squints and looks at the paper. And then he looks up at Jesse, and he looks down at the paper, he looks up at Jesse, and he says, "Is that cocaine?" And we're kind of like, we look at each other and we're like, what? No, it's wax paper. And he goes, "Oh, it looked like cocaine." And we're like, "Nope, not cocaine."
Definitely not.
Like,
I mean,
you're creeping us out. Like, go away. Like, we're fine here. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you know, you just never know what you'll see, you know, late at night, you know, in the city." And you know, I used to see all kinds of stuff. Like, I used to pick up cocaine all the time, just random places. I used to work sound at different venues, and I would find things. I just find all kinds of stuff like cocaine, weed, or just pick it up. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool, man, real cool." He was like, "Yeah, I was just working a show tonight, and and that was really cool." I was like, "Really? What show was it?" He was like, "It was at the ICC church." And I was like, "We were at that show." And he was like, "Oh, wow, yeah, it was a good concert, right?" I was like, "Yeah, it was great." I was like, "So you used to find stuff, right? You happen to find a cell phone?" He was like, "Yeah, I did find a cell phone." I was like, "A flip phone?" He was like, "Yeah." And he pulls out my phone from his pocket.
Man.
And he's like, "Is this your phone?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, and he flips it open. And he looks at the background. He's like, "What's on the background?" You know, he's not going to give the phone to somebody random. I said, "Beyonce." And he looked at it and he was like, "All right." And,
Man, Queen Bee saved your phone.
Yeah. And this is the reason why I tell the story like this, because it was so long from the time that we left the venue. Like, I lost my cell phone and I got onto the train, and the guy gets on my train randomly on an empty train 3 hours later on my car, pays attention to us because we're ripping up paper.
Yeah, because he thinks you have coke. Yeah, right.
Most coincidental, wildest story that has ever happened to me ever, of how I've lost something and gotten it back. The funny part of the story, though, a week later, I got on the train, left my phone on the train, and never saw it again.
Oh no!
That phone did not want to stay with me. It was like, "No, I'm out." So
you should have contacted that guy again and be like, "You don't have it again, do you?"
Right.
Well, that's a bummer. I was gonna ask, like, how long after the events of this did you tell your mother the story, and was she pissed, or was she like, "Okay, whatever, you don't"? But I guess you know.
I didn't tell my mother the specifics of the story.
Yeah.
But
you lost the phone that she gave you, man. She must, yeah. But I mean, it would have been great if you had got it back and it was all cool. But then a week later, you lost it. I take it you never did get to hang out with the band.
Nope.
Man, what the hell?
I don't even remember what band it was.
Sure.
I don't know. You know, it was kind of a random local band. They were really good when I saw them. But
that's so weird. I can't believe they like faked you out. Why would they make that offer if they? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was weird. It was a very weird night. It was a very weird
right. Yeah. As you know, good stories come from weird nights and stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. The night you went to the bar and had a good time watching the game and went home and everything was fine. That's not a good story, you know?
No. Absolutely
not. So you got me curious. Boston. I've never been to Boston, but it's one of those cities where in my mind it seems like it's really cool. How does it? Yeah. You know, what do you think?
Well, I lived there. Well, I lived there and then in the area
suburbs. Yeah. Okay.
For like 13 years, so I got incredibly used to it. I did go back in June this year for the first 5 years, and it was very bizarre because I live in Georgia now, where I grew up. Actually, I live really close to where I grew up, and when I moved there, I had the culture shock because, you know, a southern town to the big city in the north, different cultures, you know. I got
In Georgia, there's not people saying get in the car. It's
Yeah.
wicked smart, you know. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I go, I get back up there,
Yeah.
and I'm doing this thing where, I pass people and I kind of give them like a little nod and a smile and say hi. And they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what are you doing? Like, why are you making eye contact with me? I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to live in how I lived in Boston. Because,
Yeah.
in Georgia, or at least where I live in Georgia,
You're friendly.
people are much more friendly. And by
Yeah.
friendly, they're pleasant, in passing.
Sure.
So, but up there, it's like you just don't even look, like don't even make eye contact with me. What do you say hi to somebody? And they're like, what are you doing?
What is
So,
this guy's problem? Yeah, yeah.
why are you so happy? Don't you know the
That's
taxes are
funny.
high? But
Where do you get the nerve to say hello, sir? Yeah,
exactly.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, Boston is a big college town. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of colleges there,
Yeah,
so it's fun in that age bracket.
sure.
It's expensive though, so I didn't live in the city for very long. I lived more in the suburbs. Even the suburbs are pretty expensive.
Yeah,
So I loved it. I love the people, the friends that I have there. I met my wife there. And I brought her back down here with me. But I live with her and her mom. Her mom has a very Boston accent, which is quite pleasant. Which
nice.
some people wouldn't say is pleasant. It can be obnoxious, but it's just very. I don't know. I don't think it's specifically pleasant. It's just that it's pleasant because my mother-in-law is the one doing it, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
why it's pleasant to me.
Fair,
It makes me
fair.
feel like I'm in Boston sometimes. So.
My grandmother was Puerto Rican,
Mhm.
and like she was very very good with English, but like there were a few things like she would say McDonald's.
I
I
love
loved it,
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the little things, right? That just
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Um, roughly, I'm curious, where in Georgia are you at? Like, are you close to Atlanta or closer to like Savannah or?
So that's interesting. So I live in a town next to Augusta, Georgia.
Okay,
And I grew up in Augusta, Georgia. Augusta is on the border of South Carolina. It's like 2 hours from Savannah, 2 hours from Atlanta.
okay, right, right.
It's like, it's the town that everyone forgets, even though it's the second biggest place in Georgia. But nobody thinks of Augusta when they think Georgia. They either think Atlanta, Savannah, maybe Athens, because that's the big college town. Some people who are fancy might say, "Oh, Columbus, Georgia," and it's like, how do you know Columbus, but you don't know Augusta? Anyway, the point is that it's one of those towns that it's not super well known, but it's nice. It's a nice town. I'm glad I grew up here. Like, it's actually a super nice town to grow up in. And I moved back here because it's kind of like it's like developing more and everything, and and that's really cool. So.
Right, right. No, that seems nice. And I had a friend that was thinking of like he was thinking of relocating, and that was one of the places that he was thinking of.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, the idea of being like, yeah, 2 hours from Savannah, 2 hours from Atlanta, but kind of not in the middle of either of those. It was like,
Right.
I get it. That seems nice.
Yeah, we're about 3 hours from a good beach.
Sure.
Um, you can go to Savannah, I guess, but like Savannah, you know, um, but yeah, I mean, we're not super close to anything, but not super far away from anything when it comes to like the cooler areas.
Right,
Um,
right.
so,
Two
but we're
hours
all
is still day trippable.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Augusta is like it's a city technically, but it's like a huge suburb basically.
Word.
So yeah.
Have you, given that it's not that far and you've been you grew up in Georgia and now you've been back there for 5 years, have you ever been to Dragon Con?
I have. I went last
Y-
year.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. Are you
No,
going
it's
this
the
year?
first time I'd ever gone.
Oh,
Am I
okay.
going this year?
Yeah.
I haven't decided yet. I don't have a whole lot of time to decide, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
decided yet.
I know I'm just name drop people that I know that are going. me. So come on, let's hang out. No.
Okay.
Bo Kelly that was in the chat.
Yeah.
JCM Byrne, I think, is going to be there. R. Verdi. Bo, I know you got your list, but drop them in the chat, man. But
Yeah.
I mean,
I
that's the thing
saw
that
Bo
seems
last
appealing
year.
to me about Dragon Con is I've always heard it's a fun place to meet up with other authors, you know?
It is. So, I mean, I had fun last year. I was
Yeah.
only there for one day last year.
Oh, really? Okay.
I was kind of busy and I was like, oh, I don't know. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'll go for one day. I
Yeah.
was not sure. Like, I was a little nervous. It's a lot of people. It's very
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
That's not exactly my vibe. But I want to see all my author acquaintances that I had met online.
Right.
And I met Bo. Bo is like the nicest guy. And so many other authors I met there. You know, Ryan Cahill was there.
Yeah.
Zach Argyle was there.
Yeah.
Katie Andrews was there. I could go on. But like it was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
I do want to go back. And the reason why I'm not sure.
Hesitant, sure, because there's so many people going to Worldcon.
Yeah. So I was like, well, if everyone's going to Worldcon and they're only going to do one thing, then maybe I'll just wait until Worldcon's somewhere else, and then that nobody wants to go. So
next year, Worldcon is in Seattle. So yeah, that one seems more approachable to me than Plus, honestly, Worldcon wasn't even on my radar up until like a few months ago. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, Seattle is, man, I don't remember the last time that it was in the US. It probably wasn't while I was thinking I would ever go to Worldcon.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, it is a good opportunity. I haven't been to Seattle. So I mean, that would be kind of cool to go. But up until recently, because of the patient work that I do, I didn't plan on leaving. So the only reason I went to Dragon Con was that it was close enough to go and come back and not disrupt any of that. So that's why I only went for one day and all.
Right.
So, but now I don't have a patient that I'm with 24/7 now. So it's a little different. 24/7. It's not quite literally that, but 24/7 supervision is required, is what I mean. That's something I can consider now, which should be interesting to think about, like, what can I do with my time? And so when I went to Boston last month in June, that was the first vacation I've ever gone on, like ever in my life. Like, and by that, I mean, I've gone places, and I've taken vacation time from work, but I've always used it to do something like, I need to go on a tour, or I need to go to an author conference, or I need to, like, something that I'm pairing with work, and it may be fun work, but it's like something that I need to do. And this is the time. I've never just gone somewhere just to enjoy myself and not do anything, which is the first time I've ever done that. So now that I have that little bit of freedom, like going to an actual like convention that's for fans and not a conference for authors, like, and meeting up with authors and just like kind of, hanging out with them, like that's totally something that I'm interested in doing more.
Right. Yeah, I've been to other cons, but I haven't been to Dragon Con yet. I'm excited. Like, I mean, the vibe seems fun from the way I understand it. I love the idea of like mixing it up with other authors. So I'm going this year for the first time and check it out with like just a friend of mine. But yeah, like if I'm hopeful to make it a more recurring thing for myself and maybe drag like, because I got the 2 kids and wife. It'd be fun because I think that they would really enjoy like the my wife loves aquariums, and of course Georgia Aquarium's like world-class aquarium, Could be good. We'll see. But
yeah. I mean that seems like, I should just go just because I need to bring my wife and son to the aquarium. Like, that's a great opportunity to do that.
Right. So, yeah. There's even that Saturday night of the Dragon Con weekend, they're going to do like a special Dragon Con thing to the aquarium. So it's going to be like just Dragon Con people to the aquarium. Yeah.
No, that sounds cool.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna talk to my wife after this and like listen, we have a little freedom now. Let's go
Right?
to the aquarium and also pair it with Dragon Con.
Yeah, right. Nice. Have to make it down to Seattle next year. Awesome, dude. We'll have to. That one's. I'd like to do that one. I haven't like pulled the trigger the way I have on Dragon Con, but like I'd like to do that one. So hopefully we can hang out. I'd love to meet all sorts of bookish folks in person. That'd be neat.
West Coast of Canada. Wow, that's I don't know anybody that lives on the West Coast of Canada.
You don't know anyone in Vancouver?
I don't think I do. I don't think I
Right.
know anyone in Vancouver. I'm sure I know someone in Vancouver. I just can't think of anybody that I know in Vancouver.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, Jim, editing, writing. Like,
Yes.
you've done podcast editing. Let's start there. I guess like that's sort of. Well, I mean, you did music production first, right?
And that's exactly how I
Mm-hmm.
bridged into it. So I started recording. I mean, obviously, I recorded my own band and myself,
Mhm.
and I started recording for local bands and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting. At a certain point, I realized that the part that I hate most about recording bands. No offense to anybody listening who's in the band who I may have recorded. Not you, it's me. I just rather not interact with bands like
Oh, okay. All right.
It can be fun, but it's more fun if I'm not the one doing the work. If you know what I mean, like I'd rather either be in the room and have fun with the band, or the band sends me stuff and I do the thing and send it back to them.
Mhm.
Like I don't want to be the actual person tracking the music. So what it kind of turned into was I start getting like a couple freelance projects here and there from bigger producers who wanted me to just do the editing. Like, hey, clean up these guitar tracks. Hey, clean up these vocals a little bit, send it back to me, which is like kind of a quick turnaround job that they needed. Like, oh, can you get this back to me next week? The band's coming back in. We need to start mixing these. And it's like, okay. So, you do that and you get good at editing. And then I thought, okay, well, that's kind of interesting, but I want something a little more regular, that maybe if it doesn't pay as much, like at least it's consistent. So that's when I started getting into podcasting. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't pay as much.
That's interesting.
But it takes less time.
Sure.
It's more consistent because podcasters tend to be weekly or more.
Right.
And I was already listening to a bunch of podcasts at the time. So I was interested in podcasts. I knew that I probably wouldn't do one myself, but I could edit a podcast. Like I've edited bands and did all this music recording. Like podcasts are simple by comparison. So I'm like, okay, I'll just do that. And there's a bunch of people who were like, I don't know how to use the software, nor do I want to learn. Can you please take this off my hands? And I was like, yes, I will. Now, the key. Now, I'm a very big. I don't know if you've ever heard of Clifton Strengths at all, but I'm a very big like input and learner person. Basically, the Clifton Strengths are kind of like Gallup kind of developed like it's kind of like a personality test, but it's more of like a strengths evaluation for people, so that I don't know, different industries can evaluate strengths of employees or different people.
Okay.
And my strengths are like very high strategic, and input and learner are my two highest, which is input is like taking in information and then learner is obviously a high affinity for learning, which are both like very, that you would think that would make me a very good student, but I'm not a very high achiever, which is another one of the categories. Not a very high achiever. I don't care about that like as much as like actually taking in stuff or just doing the thing. Like, accolade isn't the point for me. So the thing is that I started taking on podcasts, and I started doing audiobooks not long after that. That were, well, it was audiobooks, it was fantasy, and I also was doing podcasts for authors, like self-publishing podcasts, like and writing podcasts, that kind of stuff. And was like, well, this is perfect because this is the stuff I listen to anyway. So like I'm doing double duty. Like it's
Yeah.
match. So
I get to get paid to listen and learn. This is fantastic. Yeah.
Exactly. Because I was doing that anyway with my day job before I started editing podcasts, where I was listening to podcasts about writing, to help me hone the craft about marketing and business and whatnot. And I started listening to audiobooks around that time because it was one of those jobs where you could like put on a set of headphones and have very little interaction with your, coworkers. Obviously you have to interact with them a little bit, but often, I could do, hours of work without having much interaction. So, I just listened to music a bunch, and then at a certain point, I started listening to podcasts and audiobooks because I wanted some diversity. That's how I kind of transitioned to that, was because it was like, this is perfect. Like I have the skill set. I have the interest in this, segment. This is a perfect match for me. So because of that, I've kind of built, or I've been working on at least, kind of building like a little sub niche of editor that is like, if you are either, on the author side, or even on the like, booktube side, like I'm the guy to come to for editing, because like, not only do I know a lot about that world, I have the skill set to accompany it. So it works perfectly for me.
We might have to talk, Jim. Yeah, but you've again, from the questionnaire, you've done like a few different podcasts, all of them kind of in the bookish space. I might have to check out this Kickstart Your Book Sales podcast. That sounds, I'm assuming that is the Kickstart just say, oh, or do they talk about Kickstarter some?
Oh, they talk about Kickstarter a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's with Monica and Russell, and Monica Leonel is, I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she in a lot of circles is big on doing a lot of like author, like helping people learn how to market and sell their books online, kind of thing. She's a fiction author herself too, but she has a big nonfiction branch of her business, and she teamed with Russell Nolte, and he is a big comics guy.
Yeah.
And he has done a lot of successful Kickstarters, and he also writes books, and he would go to like conferences and tell people, like authors, like, you should do Kickstarter. And they were like, yeah, okay, get out of here, buddy. And like, he did that for years, because for a long time, authors didn't do Kickstarters.
Yes.
He was doing Kickstarters and like killing it. Like, and he would go to all these conferences and be like, you guys should do Kickstarter. I'm telling you, it's a thing. And
right.
Like, no. And then Brandon Sanderson did his thing. And then
everyone's like, oh, it is a thing. Oh, yeah. So that crazy guy at the conferences wasn't so crazy. Shit.
Yeah. So he's been teaching people, because he's like, this is a little different. Like, it's similar, but it's more skills for direct selling than it is for selling on a retailer, which are kind of slightly different skill sets. Knowing the differences and how you approach the marketing of each, and the reasons why you would do a Kickstarter and whatnot, that's what he teaches. So at a certain point, I'm actually doing another Kickstarter for Russell, Kickstarter podcast for Russell right now. It's called the Six Figure Author Experiment. We just started that one. So it's a video podcast, so you can listen to it or you can watch it on YouTube. So that one is that one's pretty good. I would say check out the Kickstart Your Book Sales podcast. They have a book by the same title, I believe.
Yeah.
So if you just want to read the book real quick, you can do that too.
I thought I knew that name, Monica Leonel, and sure enough, she wrote a book on dictation that
Yes.
recommended to me that I picked up, and I was like, okay, this is making sense. I think I could add this to my tool belt.
Mhm.
That's cool. That's so. How many you're also doing YouTube editing?
Mhm.
So, and I'm assuming that was kind of a natural progression. Probably one or two of your podcast clients was like, I want video too. Yeah.
Nope. So
No. Okay. All right. Good.
okay, so this is what happened.
Yeah.
I started doing YouTube stuff
Ah.
because I was like, let me try doing some YouTube videos. Like, I have some things that I want to say that
Yep.
I feel like I haven't really seen like on YouTube, and I kind of want to put it out there. I know it's not going to be super popular, but it's stuff that I can share with people who like my books and like, oh, like here's some extra stuff that I made for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I made kind of evergreen stuff. It's not, most of it is evergreen.
Smart.
So I start doing that. Way behind on doing booktube, by the way, because I
Same.
have a lot of stuff on my plate, clearly, because then I start editing everybody else. But like I started doing that, and then I had some income loss at the end of last year, and I was like, well,
Damn. First, you were like, shit. Yeah.
exactly. That's
Right,
exactly what I was like at first, and then
Yeah.
I was like, crap, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I am not
Yeah.
getting another day job. I am not getting another day job. I
Yeah.
am not. What can I do? What is in my tool belt? What
Yep.
is in my tool? Oh yeah, I'm doing YouTube videos. I can edit these. So so I start reaching out to booktubers, and
Yeah.
I found a few clients. Right now, I have one consistent booktube client, and had another one, but I had to go up on my prices, and so it didn't. That happens sometimes, and I really
Yep.
wish I could have kept doing her videos, but I get it. Like, it's like one of those balances that you have to strike, and what I was charging was perfect for her, but it wasn't perfect for me, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't, like, I have too much on my plate. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But so like,
That's fair.
so there's that, and I'm doing videos for Becca's Time, but that's more of her like stuff in her in group, so it's not going out to YouTube. Actually, she does have a video podcast too, but she does it pretty infrequently now. So every now and then I'll get one, and she'll put out a random podcast. But I do a weekly, monthly one for her that I don't even think it goes up on YouTube. I think it's like behind like a Patreon wall or something. And then let's see, who else do I have? I have another person who does like cartoon and anime like reaction videos where they watch the episode and they react to watching the episode, and then they have a discussion for the episode. So I'm doing those.
Isn't that like, how crazy is our world that's a thing?
Right?
Yeah. Like, no shade on him, of course, or her, whoever this person is, but like, it's just nuts. Like, I've seen too, like, yeah, like I'll watch a random reel or whatever, and it's crazy how sometimes they're just so much more engaging when you're watching someone's reaction to that video at the same time.
Yeah. So I mean, I get that. I mean, personally, my thing is like, so the discussion section that they do after the reaction section, that's the part that I enjoy. Because I'm more interested in the discussion elements of looking back and seeing what the episode was about, like the connections, like maybe ideas of like, where's this going? Like, I think it might be doing this. And I noticed that this person said this and this. Oh, look at this. Like, look at this detail in the background. Like, that's the stuff that I like. The reaction stuff isn't quite my cup of tea, but for this person, they're like, this is what they like the most, because I kind of recommended that maybe because I'm doing this one series where they're doing She-Ra and the Princess's Power, and because that's a Netflix series, it gets copyright struck all the time. So we have to be very careful about how we cut it and trim it and all that stuff. And like, you can't show too much, and the audio can't be too loud. And sometimes you have to put filters on the audio, or maybe cut off the audio and upload and re-upload and re-upload it a bunch of times. And because of its Netflix, and like anime series are way easier because they're not paying attention, nor do they care. But like, Netflix cares. So
Netflix, yeah.
they're striking stuff down. So, you know, I was like, what if you just do the discussion? Like, because that's just way easier, and like it's mostly screenshot based, you know, and then you know, with the green screen, you know, screenshots are behind you, and I'm like moving around, they're pointing the stuff and like everything, and that's fun. And it's like this, they're not gonna strike this, like let's just do that. They were like, you don't understand my audience. My audience wants the reaction. Like that's the bread and butter. Like half of them drop off after the reaction. And it's like, wow, like, okay, I'm clearly not your target audience. So
yeah.
let's keep doing it then, you know. So
that's wow. That's I mean, you must take some time with those to do the different work with that you're talking about, trying to avoid the strike. Yeah, that sounds like real editing, not just sort of, you know, the you know, because sometimes like a booktube video, like my most popular video was like thousands of views, and it was just me talking about the terrible Wired article on Brandon Sanderson.
Right.
And like, I don't think I edited it at all. I think it was just like, you know, I it was all just sort of stream of consciousness talking about the article and reading some of it and being like, this guy's an idiot.
Right. Honestly, stream of consciousness and little to no editing can work like very well. I think it depends on your audience. It depends on your presentation and what you're talking about and what you're doing.
Right.
I don't think it requires like if you want to do booktube or anything, you don't need to edit a lot. Like you really don't. Like that's not what the people are really there for. Usually. But certain people, you know, some of the larger booktubers, you know, some of them have flashier presentations. And the reason they do have flashier presentations is because that's a style that they've cultivated, not because that's what it requires. If you get what I mean. I don't think that's necessarily a prerequisite for booktube, because there are other booktubers who are very large, like Murphy. She's huge. She doesn't have fancy editing at all, you know. So like, you don't have to do that. Sometimes you kind of, some people kind of get all in their head about like, oh, my editing's not as good, and I'm kind of like that too. Like I want to make the best thing possible, and also I like learning how to do the things. So that kind of goes hand in hand. So it's I mean, just if you're interested, just get out there and do it. So.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, editing is the part of doing videos that I like the least. But but I mean, I think some of it though is the software I use. I use this like crap. What is it even called? Hang on. What is this junk?
If you call it the software that I use, then I'm gonna be like, oh, that's what I use. It's just gonna be funny.
No. What? OpenShot.
Oh, okay. I don't use that, but sure.
It's for like, I mean, it's fine when you're just like trimming clips, but anything that you want to do that's like remotely beyond that, it's just a pain in the ass. Even like trying to kind of like crop out, like, no, I want this part of the video, not the whole video. I want this, and it's like a pain in the butt. And
is there a specific reason you chose that software?
Someone recommended it to me, and I've been running with it since. But I think I need to go to DaVinci Resolve, which seems like it's sort of the de facto standard now.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Yeah,
and the best part of DaVinci Resolve is that it's free to start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
not free to start. It's free until you decide to pay for it, because the upgrade to free, and it's not a subscription like, you know, Adobe products. So like,
did they walk back that silly thing where they're like, we're going to use all of your shit for AI if you ever use Adobe products?
I don't know if they ever walked that back. And they also have this weird thing in their contract now where it's like, oh, like if you do a free trial, or you do like a month-to-month thing, what was it? It's a confusing wording. It's like, if you you have to pay cancellation fees
Oh wow. Oh
if
man.
you cancel a month-to-month subscription but didn't do the whole year, because it's like this weird wording where it's like, oh, pay month-to-month for a year, and like it's like, well, what if you cancel? And because the assumption is that if you're paying month to month, you can cancel anytime. They basically
Yeah.
put people up with working.
When did
And
they like, get to be evil? It seemed like they were not quite,
I think maybe when they realized that it became like the standard. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like colleges teach Adobe
This
products.
yeah.
Like it's kind of like it is the standard suite. And the reason why it makes sense, I mean, their suite of tools work together super well.
Yeah.
They keep them updated at least, they're
Yeah.
pretty reliable. Premiere doesn't crash as much anymore, apparently. So, I mean, and they're very well known, like all of their stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. But there, for every tool that they have, there's another tool that just
Yeah.
is not as predatory.
Right.
So but the problem is that they don't integrate as well together as Adobe
Yeah.
products do, and it's a shame that they have to be that way. But yeah, I definitely recommend DaVinci Resolve. I really enjoy it. I paid for the pro version or premium version, whatever it's called, but only after I decided I want to get like the newest updates faster. But yeah, I kind of don't even need that. For with the kind of editing that I'm doing, kind of editing that you might need to do. Honestly, you could do a whole like real like film without using the pro version.
Right.
Like you really don't need it. There's only a few things locked behind it. So
Right. Yep, I'll have to make the jump sometime. So you've got one consistent like BookTube client. And briefly, I'm just curious, like how many like consistent podcasting editing clients do you have?
Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Now I gotta look at my invoices. Hold on.
Well, I didn't mean to give you homework like that, but
I think
what's your books for me?
it looks like I have 4 consistent podcast clients.
That's pretty rad, man. That's pretty cool. And like, I mean, you don't even have it must have been all like word of mouth that's brought to the clients, I assume. Well, I guess you said that you were kind of like reaching out to some booktubers at some point too, right?
Yeah. So BookTube wasn't word of mouth. I kind of had to reach out to people.
Yeah.
To kind of get into the door.
Yeah.
And podcasting has been pretty much word of mouth.
That's
but
awesome.
Pretty much. And by that is that, I mean, like, since most of my clients tend to be authors or people marketing to authors, I just went to author conferences.
Yeah.
And I happened, like, I don't go there to find a new podcast to edit. It's just like, maybe it comes up and it's just like, oh, yeah, like I edit podcasts and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh, I've been trying to start a podcast about this thing, or I've been wanting to do this, or I have a friend, blah, blah, blah. And, it might work out, it might not, but that's kind of how it started. And same thing for audiobooks, is that's how I started doing that. I haven't done an audiobook in a while. It's been 2 years now, I think, since I've done an audiobook. But
that's cool.
Audiobooks are a lot more work. So I kind of don't even, I'm okay with that.
I mean, the impression I have, and maybe I have the wrong impression because I guess I only know Travis Baldry, but I know that he does like all of the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
He records himself and he does all of the editing. So, and I kind of thought that, like, unless you're someone like Will Wheaton, who might record a thing, but he's going to be at the studio and that's all he's going to do is show up and speak. Like, I'm thinking most of the people on ACX do all their own editing too. Is that true or not so much? Or does it depends, as with all things? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, so my first audiobook client, Garrett Robinson. He has like a lot of books, and so he decided he was going to narrate them himself. Very good voice, so it worked out perfectly. So he can do it himself. He used to be in a band. He knows how to use the software. But after doing a few of them, he was like, man, I really wish I could do the performance and then hand it off to somebody, do almost all the rest of the work, and then get it back and proof it, and then put it out instead of doing all this other work. Instead, I could be writing,
Yeah.
And I was like, well, here I am.
Hi. Yeah.
So, which was great because I had already read the first couple books in his series, and I'm like, well, this is a great way to read the rest of the books in the series. Again,
you're gonna pay me to read your books I was reading anyway? Yes.
I'll read these anyway. Of course,
so
I'll
awesome.
do it. Now,
Yeah.
granted, it is a lot of work, and I basically end up usually, well, until I found a different strategy, but I don't want to go into the minutiae there. But I basically ended up listening to the books twice because of making sure I get things perfect and everything. So there's that. And by that I mean I listen to the chapter twice in a row before I move on, instead of going back to the top. But the thing with that is that there's people like that. So there's the author, the indie author who has a book or a book series, knows they want to record it, but does not have the editing skills or confidence in themselves to learn, or just doesn't want to learn how to do it, whatever the reason, and they have just the money, like I can pass this off, but I do want to narrate it. So that there's that situation. The second situation is that there are companies that do audiobooks, and they have a list of narrators who come in. The narrator is just a narrator. They're a voice actor. They come in, they do the thing, and then the company does the rest. So they pay the narrator, they pay the editor, and that's how it happens. So I also worked for a company who did that kind of thing as well, where I did freelance work for them. They would email me and say, hey, have this project.
We got a thing. Do you have, what's your schedule like?
Right. And it's like, okay, send it over, Wait, how long is it? Okay, so send it over.
Is this a 10-hour book or a 40-hour book? What are we talking here?
Yeah, because audio, as you can imagine, the length of the audiobook matters a lot. Because a 10-hour audiobook, like that could be 50 hours of work. You know what I mean? Like or more, honestly.
Sure.
It depends on the quality, how the person recorded it and whatnot. So it could be a lot of different factors. It depends on the speed of the editor as well. As I've gotten better, I've gotten faster, but every narrator is different. So anytime I get a new narrator, it slows me down because it's I don't know his tics. Like I don't know their pattern. Like I have to learn them. And that even goes down to the waveform because you get so acquainted with seeing a waveform on the screen from a certain person that I can especially for Garrett, because I did so many of his books, I can look at it and say, okay, that's an S sound, that's a T sound, that's it. Like I can see it in the waveform, like it gets that. So like I said, like at a certain point, I didn't have to start listening to his books twice because I could look at it and I could scroll and look at the waveform and do certain edits without hearing it. So,
tell me you've been in music in audio all your life without telling me you've been in audio all your life. Wow, that's insane, dude. Okay.
And so there's that. That's that. So so those are basically the two different types of people that you get that would have a separate editor.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Briefly, there was this wonderful question in the chat that I want to ask that I don't know why I didn't think to ask it, but this is very perfect. Favorite metal bands?
Oh boy.
Yep.
So metal is funny because you can get in trouble because some people are like, that's not real metal.
That's not metal. Yeah.
Right. Or it could be like,
Apocalyptica, that's not a real band.
Yeah. Oh man, I forgot about Apocalyptic. I haven't listened to them in a while. That's amazing. I'm glad you brought them up. Now I'm gonna go listen to them. I listened to so much Apocalyptica in high school. So, favorite metal bands. So, I'm very much a. I grew up under the whole like emo punk, metalcore segment of metal and hard rock. So like I was that kid. So my favorite metal, like these guys are not that old, but like man, like they have a couple albums that just floored me. But Architects, it's a band from the UK. My God, like that band to me like put out a couple of like near perfect albums. Um, and I love them. I'm a big fan of a band called Counterparts. They're like melodic metalcore. I really like them. Melodic hardcore kind of thing, kind of like Misery Signals, but a little different. And so I've been listening to them a lot. August Burns Red is a standby for me. Let's see. I don't know. I listen to so many bands that, like, if you ask me who my favorite is, it's hard to pin it down. But it's
Yeah.
just like I just like a lot of different bands. You know,
Okay.
and obviously, you know, I like some of the classics, like Ride the Lightning is a fun album. Like that's such a fun Metallica album that
Right.
I just love it so much. Pantera, I love Pantera. Big influence on the type of music that I listen to, so it's clearly very connected to me.
Nice.
So yeah.
Yeah, I remember listening to lots of Metallica back in the day. You know,
Mhm.
it was
Yeah.
yeah. Like in grade school, my best friends, like him and his two brothers that were like they were, you know, obsessed. So
Mhm.
there was a lot of that.
Yes.
Well, I want to talk to you about developmental editing
Mhm.
and your own book, but I also want to be respectful of your time. I never know how long I'm going to go with these things. We've already been talking for an hour. Are you good to talk more? Or do you need to run?
I'm good.
Yes. Okay. All right. So you've done developmental editing for books, right?
Mhm.
What's like, the first thing that you look for when you're getting a new work? What's, do you do like a full read through before you are kind of taking out the red pen, or what's your approach,
Um, well, there's two approaches.
Yeah.
Um, First, okay, there are two ways that you could get a book as a development owner. You could get a
Hmm.
book in the stage where it's, I wouldn't call it a book coach, but in a stage where it's like this is in development, you
Yeah.
know. I like that side of it way better than getting a book that's like, here's the book.
Done.
And it's like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
my God, like, because you don't know what you're getting and you have no idea. And then like they work so hard on it, and then you have to be the bad news person. I'd much rather catch someone before you have to be the bad news person. Like you can say, hey, this is a problem right now. Like you should
Yeah.
stop right now and fix it. Like it's not too late. And
You don't
obviously,
actually have conflict. Yeah.
right? Yeah,
You're right.
exactly. Like you wrote a 90,000 word book with no conflict. Congratulations. Like you don't have to say that to somebody. So that
Yeah.
stresses me out. So I do like to get an author, especially if they're a newer author, like before. So I can say like, oh, you're making this common mistake.
Hmm.
You're only in the first chapter. This might be an ongoing problem. I'm going to point it out now. Don't get freaked out, but here's a small adjustment you can make. Keep writing, kind of thing. Or I will, if they're a more established author, I like the idea. I've rarely got a chance to do this because this is actually, it's kind of more of a trad pub thing, and I don't work in trad pub, but like give me an outline of what you're going to write and let me dev edit that. And then you can use that as a word map or a roadmap. And I think that is something, provided you're the kind of person who can outline, first of all. But if you're an outliner, I think that should be, I think that's a way smarter approach for developmental editing, because that can be way, way cheaper than paying per word. Like, especially for epic fantasy, like if you write a 150,000 word book, that dev ed is going to be really expensive. But if you give me an outline that's like 5,000 words, 10,000 words, that's a very cheap dev edit. You know what I mean? Like, you can basically tell me the story and I can say, oh, well, in this scene, you know, watch out for this. Like, it seems like the arc of the story isn't moving. Like, there's some thematic stuff that isn't resonating. You know, like there's a huge plot hole here. Have you thought about this? That kind of stuff. Like, because I think usually, especially experienced authors who have, like, and by experienced, I mean, it's not your first rodeo. Maybe you've written 2, 3, 4 books plus, you know, they may not want or need like a full dev edit. It probably would be nice. But if you're the one paying for it out of pocket and you kind of know how to do the thing, then like that's not as helpful. But if you can say, hey, here's the outline of a story, can you tell me, like, do you see anything weird about this? Like, how does the character arc look? You know, does it look fine? How does the, you know, the pacing look fine? Like, do you see any glaring plot holes? Like, does it look like it's like, what do you think? And I can like analyze it for the different things that I need to analyze it for. Like, who is the target audience? You know, like, what is the theme of the story? Which is something a lot of authors may not think about. The theme is important because it's directly tied to your character arc. So whether or not you want a theme or not, it's in there. You probably just haven't thought about it, which is fine. But if you know what you're doing, then you can direct it. You know, you can push it where you want it to go. And theme is usually an intimidating word, but it's not that intimidating. Don't worry about it. But like, so like that those are the, you know, the things that I prefer. After the fact, I have to do a completely different process. So for that, I have to say, okay, I am going to go through this book and outline it so that I can see all the threads, because I want to be able to map it out so that I'm not missing anything. And
so
then,
you either start with their outline or you get the book and then you build the outline. Yeah,
it's gonna get outlined either way. I'm sorry. This book is gonna get outlined. Either before or after, it's happening.
That makes sense, though. You're yeah, and then you have that outline as a tool to be like, okay, like, is this kind of all the same points that you were talking about before, right?
Right, exactly. It becomes a tool for the edit, you know, so that you can say, okay, scene 1, these are the threads you're hitting. This is the movement in the thread, in the plot thread that you're, or arc that you're going through. So then I can point out those things, and oh my God, my outlines, they're things. So like, I have a spreadsheet, and, you know, in my spreadsheet, you know, I have a word count. I have, you know, often I'll have, if it's in Google Docs, I'll put a link to the doc. If it's one long doc, then that doesn't matter, then I won't have that. But like, and then I have like the chapter name or the chapter number. You know, I have who's the POV character in the scene. If there's multiple POV characters, who are the POV characters? Who is actually in the scene, whether or not they're a POV character or not. That's a column. Where's the scene set? You know, I have that in there, because those are all details that are important in dev editing. Then I have a column for like, what are the plot or character arcs that we're covering, you know? And then I have a column for, this is the summary. And I put the summary. I usually have a copy of it in an actual document too, because sometimes it's easier to work at, but I like being able to see that in column, because then you can start to see some patterns. And you can start to say like, you have a lot of scenes that take place at the tavern in this book. Why are there so many tavern scenes? And why are 5 of them back to back? Maybe there's an issue there, you know, like, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. It depends on what you're doing, but like, that can be a little red flag, you know.
Yeah, but yeah, back to back 5 times. Maybe
Right.
your characters have a drinking problem, right?
Maybe that's the point of the book, but you know.
Right.
But
When you said
yeah.
too that you have a summary, like are we talking sort of like the sort of, I think of it as the back of book summary, that like sort of the sales summary, like the pitch kind of, or a different summary
So for summary, I mean like the summary of each scene and or
of
chapter.
each? Okay.
Yeah. So like I basically figure out like what is the scene, what happens in the scene, and I make a
Right.
summary for it. You know,
Got it.
making sure I'm looking for like what is, you know, what's the goal of the character, you know, what are the progressive complications, you know, what's the arc of the scene, you know.
Yeah.
And then I do that, and then I can look at it and identify like, oh, you know what, this doesn't have, like, the scene doesn't have any tension because I wrote it, and like this is what happens. Like this is what happens. This is what the scene is. Like it's, you know, Conan walks into a bar, has
Yeah.
buddies, talks about mermaids, and then leaves the bar. Like there's no plot progression. There's no,
Right.
you know, maybe there's character progression because we get to learn who his buddies are, but maybe, you know, you're trying to trim the book and trying to find places to trim the book, and you
Yeah.
realize like this scene is only doing one thing and it's doing it very thinly. You
Yeah.
know, maybe there's double duty that can be done here, or maybe the scene
Right.
should be cut, or maybe you're trying to work something in, like, oh, I really want to fit in this thing, I don't know where to put it. Maybe you can put it there. Like there's not enough stuff going on in this scene, you know. And so I have these things that I can look at so that I can quickly spot, you know, what to do with each section without, you know, having a plethora of notes in a document, you know, and having
Right.
to figure out like, oh, I forgot about that note. And then you have to go, and every time you read through it again, it's like, oh, I forgot about that note again. Like that's really annoying to me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So then when you're doing these dev edits, that kind of spreadsheet, that outline becomes your deliverable to your client.
It can be often. Okay. It has been where I've given it to them like, this is what your story looks like.
Mm-hmm.
It usually comes with an editorial letter though, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's very useful because they don't know what they're getting from me. Like that can be very confusing. Like, what is this? You know?
Sure.
And they might look at it for a while and figure it out, but they're like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, okay, this is an outline in a spreadsheet. What am I supposed to do with this? No. But
Right.
you know, if it's good reference material for them. But the editorial letter is really where there's also a column. The reason why it can be useful too is because I usually put a column for like my notes about the scene, about what they might need to change in each scene. So
Sure.
I do that, but often in my correspondence with them, like I'm using that as mostly as a tool for myself. So
Yeah.
like in my correspondence with them, like we're talking about the scenes. I'm like, this is what I found in this scene. This is the issue that I found in this scene. This is what's great about the scene, you know, because that's important too. They need to know what they're doing right. So yeah.
That is, yeah. I always, I meet every week with some fellow writers in town, and we've all become a critique group. But I definitely, they'll rip my stuff apart, and it's better for it, and I'm grateful for it. But I also need them to tell me, not only for my own ego, but like what's working, so I don't change that.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I really miss being in a writing group. I miss that a lot. I was in one for about a year. That was a great experience. I know some people don't have great experiences, so I'm glad you're having a great experience with it.
Right? No, I got lucky. I literally got on my local subreddit and was like, hey, I've been watching these I'm thinking of doing writing again, and I've been watching these Brandon Sanderson YouTube lectures.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone want to get together and discuss them with me?
Right.
And at the time, 2 other people showed up, and we've been meeting for 2 years, and then I dragged one other person into it like a year later, and we like fiercely protect our little group of 4 because it's working out. We don't want to fuck it up,
Yes. See, that's what happened with my group. Like one person got in there that kind of spoiled the whole thing.
We had one person for a while that we're like, sure, yeah, come hang out. They saw the post on Reddit, and she joined like much after we had started the thing, and this poor woman, like, she was like, I want to write a book about running for president. And like, what? Yeah, like a fiction. She's like, no. When she wanted to write like a campaign platform. We're like, she ended
Oh,
up not coming anymore, and I was grateful, because that wasn't fitting, you know.
yeah. That would be something I would not be interested in helping someone do.
Yeah. Like, we're trying to write, like fantasy and sci-fi, and
Right.
you want to write about abortion? I don't know, man. I'm
Yeah.
not, that's not how I want to spend my Saturday mornings, Uh-uh.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what's something that you wish like authors knew about the developmental editing process that you feel like isn't, besides the fact that, a developmental editor like you is available to work with like early in the game, and you would like to do that,
Yeah, I mean that is a big one. Could like definitely approaching a dev. I mean, and the reason why I say this is because I kind of want more authors to do this, like approach dev editors and let the community know like this is a thing, because like there's a lot of indie authors out there that need a cheaper option, and the only reason you're not getting hired is because you're too expensive. And it's not your fault that you're too expensive. You should get paid, but maybe there's a different product you can offer. So there's that.
Right.
The second thing is that like, it's definitely like a collaboration, and sometimes, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just a critique partner and not a collaboration. Everyone has or needs something different from an editor. So sometimes you have to make what you need clear from the editor. And then maybe they're the wrong match for you. Maybe they can tell you like, oh, that's not how I do things. I'm sorry. But you know what? I know these other developmental, or maybe they like, because I don't, honestly, it's so much better if you're paired with somebody who clicks with you.
And of course.
If rather than both of you having a bad time, and nobody wants that. Even if you're getting paid, this, a book that, I don't know, I'm just the kind of person like if I'm not having a good time, it makes doing the work way harder. And then it makes me feel like, oh, like I wish I was paid more. And like, but knowing technically, intellectually, that wouldn't make me happier. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because of the kind of person I am, like that won't make me happier. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll feel a little better about it, but I won't feel that much better about it. Like I'll feel bad about it still. So, definitely find somebody who works well with you, and don't lowball them, but maybe request a different product and say like, hey, Jim Wilbourne sent me.
Jim Wilbourne said, stop doing this shit you're doing and give me what I want. Jim Wilbourne, Grammy Award winning college dropout rock star.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah. Find someone that you can work with that matches your style and what you need from a dev editor, and that
makes sense. I think like along with that, and you talked about, people may need different things. How often do when you're working in a dev edit, does the author sort of push back on you, and how has there been like, I mean, because like, with my critique group, there are times where I'm just like, no, like, especially if I get conflicting input from the three, then I just need to make a decision, right? But like, how often does an author just be like, well, I see what you're saying, but here's what I'm thinking, and it might actually be like, oh, well, okay, then you sort of change your thoughts on what they had.
That happens a lot.
Okay.
Usually when that happens, there are cases where I get pushed back.
And they're just wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm like, well, no, I'm right about this. Like I know I'm right about this, but this is their book. I can't.
Sure.
I'm not going to argue with them. Like this is their story. I'm going to let them do their story.
Yeah.
I've already presented my case. I might push back a little bit and say, like, I really think this is important because of this. And if they still don't want to do it, I'm not going to,
Yeah,
like,
right. You can't make them. Yeah, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And nor is it worth, like any of that, because that's not what I'm hired to do. I'm hired to help them, and
Right.
they can either accept the help or they don't, So on the other side of it, I get some pushback, which I don't really consider pushback. It's more of like where, I'll suggest something and they're like, well, I'm trying to do this, or in the next book, I know I want to do this, so this won't work. So, I don't know what's going on in their head. So I can't,
Sure.
sometimes what I might say may not resonate with them. But
Right.
this is why, because sometimes I like doing Zoom calls with authors, especially when you're like trying to figure out what's going on. And more often than not, usually what will happen, I'll point out an issue, which is more of like, this is broken because kind of issue, or this isn't functioning well because issue. And I'll tell them why I think it's not functioning well. And then often I'll give them an example of how they can fix it. Often the example, I think it will be a good example because it's my example. But sometimes they'll come back with like something completely different. And I'll be like, that's really cool. And that's what I mean by, like, for me, often it feels like a collaboration. Where it's just like, oh, that's really cool. And, we can build on each other's ideas and everything. Because I love idea generation. Like, if I could sit in a room and brainstorm with people all day long, that would probably be the best job ever. I get such a huge sense of satisfaction from brainstorming with someone on a creative project and helping them get to the next step. Like that feels really good. Like, it is like dopamine into the veins, like instantly.
Right.
Doing that and helping people get to that process has been very rewarding. So pushback I see as an opportunity to, like, say, oh, okay, well, what about this? Let's get to this place where, like, we get you something that works for you, that's also narratively sound. Like, I don't care if it's my idea. Like, let's just get something that works. And so to me, it's like an opportunity to, like, crack my knuckles and say, like, okay, let's brainstorm, let's do this. So,
right. That's cool. If there's anyone out there that's listening that's like, man, Jim seems like someone I want to work with in the editing capacity, is there anywhere where you, like, have some of your like?
Oh man, I've been so word of mouth with stuff. So I used to have an editing page up on my
your website.
And I took it down because I was kind of focused on other things, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't take on many clients. And people they'll find me because they talk to whatever person. Which has been my thing. Like, I don't have much, like, of a presence on almost any of the jobs that I do. I just keep finding little tiny things around and compiling them. But, like, oh man, like, maybe I should put something up just for you guys. Just email me. Send me an email if you like.
Makes sense.
And we'll talk. So
Joe Rixman has been in the chat, and he's been, like, kind of bagging and like, great question, like, like, absolutely, that sort of thing. But he says, are you primarily doing fantasy or science fiction also in terms of the editing? I think
yes. Yeah, that's my main jam for.
Just the two, science fiction and fantasy?
Yes, I could do both. Yeah. I don't think I haven't. Well, no, I wouldn't really consider that science fiction, but I've only done fantasy dev editing so far. But I love science fiction. I read a lot of science fiction.
What's one of your favorite sci-fi authors?
Okay, right now Becky Chambers is my jam.
Oh my god. With the Wayfinder series or the newer?
Yes, the Wayfinders. I haven't read her newest stuff yet because I'm still grieving having finished the Wayfinder, because I've tried to make that stretch out, because, like, after the first 2 books, I was like, oh, I really like this. And it was like, oh, there's only 2 more books. And I was like,
Yeah.
I am going to drag this out as long as possible. So I waited a year to read the next one. And then I waited another year to read the next one. And it was sad. So
if you had been either developmental editor or just sort of a advisor of Becky Chambers with book 1, would you have encouraged her to change anything?
For book 1?
Yeah.
I probably would have advised her to make it more like the following books than the book that it is.
Maybe. See, I haven't. I've read all of book 1 and I really enjoyed it. And I've gotten a little bit into book 2, but I haven't gotten I haven't finished it yet. I certainly intend to, but I haven't gotten there yet. So tell me more.
Okay, so I think I don't know this for sure because I don't know where she's been or what her experience is or what went on behind the scenes. But the first book kind of had a slight Firefly vibe to me.
Sure.
Where it kind of was presenting as this is a space adventure, but that's not really what it was. And I think in a way it tried to do both. And maybe it was like that on purpose in the sense of she was thinking strategically, what if I can slowly get people to like what I really want to do by having an easy in. And maybe people once they see this and they'll start to see what I like. And then when they get to book 2 and realize okay, it's more of that, but more on this side, not the space adventure side. Maybe they'll be okay, I can get into this. And almost like when you're watching a Star Trek story and you're okay, Star Trek is space adventures. But
sure.
It has it has social things in it and whatnot. But then you get an episode where it's just there's no space battles in this one. This is just this is just an intimate story. And those are some of my favorite episodes. Just because I understand the characters now. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things.
Sure.
So I guess maybe that's a prerequisite, but she has a very good way of getting you into the characters really quickly and helping you understand who they are, which obviously if you have a novel, it's easier to do that. But so yeah, that's what I would have recommended, is that make it more like the following books than kind of that ease in novel. Because maybe people, I don't know, it's my least favorite of the 4 personally, but I could see how it could be the opposite for other people because it's doing the other thing more. So
see, I've heard from some people that they really love her writing, but they felt like there just wasn't sort of enough of a plot in the first book. And I get where they're coming from, but I don't really think that that's the area where I felt like there was a misstep probably from the publisher was sort of the way that it's pitched is it's the adventure of that. I can't remember the name because I'm terrible with character names, but I think it's Rose or something. But the first character that you meet that's joining the crew, it's pitched as her adventure, and it's not. That's not what the book is, And I think that's a thing that sort of turns some readers off,
Right. I think that's similar to what I was going for, where I think it's a misalignment of expectations where there is that adventure story, but it's barely there. It's barely an adventure story there, but it's really it's a character story. It's a character study. And her other books after that are way more character study focused and almost no adventure in them. They're basically literary science fiction. They're cozy sci-fi, actually.
I wrecked it to someone recently as cozy sci-fi too. Yeah.
So literary might be the wrong word, but it's definitely a cozy sci-fi. It's there's not the stakes. Well, sometimes the stakes are high, but it's not they can be personally high or mid to high, but it's not the world about to explode. Right.
Yeah. They're not saving the universe. They're just trying to do their job. you know?
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
the stories are more intimate. And when the stakes are high, it's because, oh, like, I'm worried about my son because, I'm worried that, he's getting a little rude or something. I'm thinking of like the last book right now. And like, it's like, that's not the way we do things and stuff like that. Like these intimate stories that you can super relate to.
Right.
The last book in the series, sorry, this you got me on a Becky Chambers tangent. The last book
I'm
in the
here for it.
series is like a love letter to everyone who loved the first three books because
Mhm.
like I feel like it'll expands the universe a little bit more, even though like what happens kind of happens like in a very small place, like on a backwater planet where nothing is happening. But it's like
Mhm.
four different species like that are trapped there together. Um, and they kind of they're stuck there. And none of them
Nice.
are humans, which
No.
made it so interesting. It's the only book where there's no humans, and the third book is only humans, I think. So it's like a
That's
complete flip,
interesting.
and it really feels like a love letter because it feels like, oh, like now you get to see a lot of the other aliens, and one of the characters uh, from the first book is in that book, one of the non-human characters. And so that makes it loosely tied. They're actually all loosely tied together, but
Yeah.
not very tied. They could basically be read as standalones, I think.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
but I do recommend publication where I think it makes the most sense that way.
Right.
But it's not really, it's not that kind of series. They could be read independently, I think.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like it's a very like natural progression from book 1 to book 2, but like yeah, so far you don't necessarily. Yeah. It's almost like following not some of the key characters in book 1, but
Right.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, interesting. All right. Let's finally talk about your books. What do you think?
Okay. I mean, that's way less interesting for me. We could talk about Becky Chambers some more. No, I'm just kidding.
That's funny.
Um,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, we should tell this little audience I have a little bit about your books. That's it's important. So the seventh cadence,
mhm.
you again in the questionnaire that you don't remember, you you said it's the post-apocalyptic science fantasy novel in epic fantasy close, and I got to tell you, like that sounds amazing.
Yeah. I would say it's light on the post-apocalypse, but I only say that because when I really thought about what I did, I was like, well, in a way, this is kind of puts like there, like
Sure.
a lot of the world leaders are gone now because of this one event, and like like this is kind of like what happens like when like everyone dies. So
That's crazy.
not everyone died, but like especially in a particular region. So and not they're not all dead, but a lot of them are. So but yeah, so yeah, I guess that is what it is in some
How
ways.
Tell me, like, I mean, how is okay. When I think of science fantasy, I think of like Star Wars, right? That's what I think of.
Mhm.
Um, but you've got a epic fantasy close. So did you take away the lightsabers and give them bows and arrows, or tell me how like what does it sort of feel like in the world?
So to me, it's like science fantasy, similar to the way where I think in a lot of ways the Stormlight Archive is science fantasy.
Okay.
Because when you really think about his magic system, like in how he thinks about um like how the fabrials work and like how certain things work, like it's very logical in the magic system and not just rule based, but like, oh, he's actually borrowing from science here. Like the stuff that they build with fabrials, like he's like building something that we could build in real life using electricity, and like he's using those science elements and just wrapping it in magic and
Hmm.
just saying like they don't know about science. Like this is science for them. So, but it looks the same because this is what it looks like for them. Like this is how science works in their world. And I like that idea. So, I didn't get this idea from that, but it really comes from me liking a lot of sci-fi. And I love it when a story, like I did grow up a big Star Trek fan, and like I loved it when like the characters figured out the solution and there was like some scientific loose technobabble like reason behind it. But like it kind of made sense, like based off of what I knew about science. It was like, oh yeah, reverse the polarity. No, that's the one. That's not the one that I mean. But like, oh, like it turns out that there was like a mini black hole and this, and it was like flowing through the ship, and that's what happened. And like sometimes theoretically this could happen. Well, how do we fix
Right.
it? And like they come up with like a pseudoscience like kind of like solution to it.
It always sounds
Sometimes
like plausible enough,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, I like that. And
Yeah.
like, so I kind of want to kind of do some of that, but I also love epic fantasy. So I was like, how can I bring that into epic fantasy and do like dragons and stuff? So
Nice,
like,
nice.
so the magic system that I have, not to be too spoilery, because the first book doesn't dive into the magic system as strongly as the second book starts to. But the magic system is very science-based. Basically, magic is raw energy, and your understanding of the natural universe is how you direct that energy. And also, there's only one person who can do magic, and he's gone. And the only way you can do magic now is to use the spells he's left behind. And the way he wrote the spells is, well, this is actually getting into, because I'm very excited about this because I get to like explore this in the book that I'm writing right now.
Nice.
So it's not a huge spoiler. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but not a real spoiler.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's only a spoiler if you just want the world building revealed to you in the book, but it doesn't like break the plot or anything. So like I wanted to do the whole idea of like, what if you had to engineer your magic system? Like, what if you had to say like, okay, I understand how chemistry works now. How do I, make, poison, with method? You know what I mean? So what spells do I need to do? Like, this spell makes this reaction happen with these two elements. Like, so, and by element, like, what are we talking? Are we talking about this isn't just like elements like they've actually figured out molecular structure. They don't call it that. You know what I mean? Like, but they figured it out, and they're like, okay, like now I need to like put together like a protein that hurts you. Like, and like this is like the different things like they have to do. And like, there were basically the wizard of the world, he could do magic, but like he had a vast number of scientists around him that helped him work, because there's no way you can science all by yourself. Like, it's a thing that gets added to over time. And so like, they have like, a vast inventory of knowledge and like countless spells that have to be put together like Lego pieces in order to make one spell, and you have to understand how all these pieces interact. Like, okay, this one spell form, which is like really long, like needs to be the spell that makes water turn to ice. You know what I mean? But like, I need to do that spell 300,000 times to like do this happen. So how do I make that happen? Okay, now I have to build a spell that makes a repeating spell. You know what I mean? Like, so like, it's like you're thinking about this like an engineer. So like, I wanted to do that so badly, and I was like, this is going to be so much fun. So that's kind of where the magic goes, and why I consider it science fantasy, in that like it's more of like that. And then also like often what I like to do in the stories is that I try to give them problems so that in the end they have to use, like, in a very Star Trek way, like have like a solution to the problem that you can think, oh, that's like a real world thing. Like if you take this and mix it with that, like that happens, you know. If you put these things together, and if you build this thing, like, oh, that will happen. Oh, like I'm trying not to spoil plots, but like, like if you do these things, like I know about that. I learned about that in science class in fourth grade. Like I know this, like, but like you don't see it happening, and then when like it hits you, you're like, oh my god, I understand. Like this is science. So it's a lot of fun.
So if you like the hard magic of Brandon Sanderson and the sort of sciencey figuring things out of like Andy Weir with The Martian, sounds like this might be your jam, huh?
Yeah. It's like
I like it.
maybe
I like
a
it.
little bit like The Martian, but not all by yourself, and a lot more war and sword battles and dragons.
Nice. You just imagine Mark Watney going, "That's a dragon."
I don't want to say his book needed that because it was really good.
Oh yeah,
but,
yeah. I love The Martian. I love The Martian. I mean,
Yeah.
but a dragon would maybe. I mean, dragon makes anything better, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to mess with it. I feel like that was such a good story. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think it needs dragon.
What? No, yeah. No, you're probably right. I'm curious. You mentioned early on that like your writing is a little slow. I imagine that what's kind of, I mean, it sounds complex intentionally in a really cool and fun way, but like some of this is probably what makes it kind of slow. The problem solving,
It does at certain points. I'm a heavy outliner,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm problem solving, but it's usually that's not the hardest part for me. Usually the hard part is the fact that I decided to do like an epic fantasy that has like 7 POV characters all going through character arcs like that, and I'm trying to do it as efficiently as possible. And I want things to feel connected. So like if the characters are together, like like they can go all through their own character arcs, but how do they all cross, and like how do they influence each other, and like
So
I'm trying to
you made your first series a very complex series, yeah.
Yes, and that was a huge mistake. Because it's just it basically makes me want to, and I want to get it right. I'm kind of obsessed getting it right. Like, and obviously there's no such thing as a perfect book, but like there are things about it that I'm like, oh my god, I want to do this. I want to do this. Which of these threads can I put in? I can't do that this book. Maybe I can do it next book. And like I'm trying to figure out, I'm thinking about the future and like trying to set pieces up, and like so that I have something to do, but also I'm like thinking like, okay, can I do this? No, I can't do this. And like because I'm trying to end it in 5 books and I'm terrified of it getting too big, that it becomes like a 12-book series.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not trying to make that. Honestly, I mean, it would be fun, but I'm not trying to make that.
Right.
So, yeah, it's that. I have a lot of little projects going on, and I'm just naturally slow. Like when I get stuck, it's because I didn't quite think something through, and I'm such a meticulous planner that I get worried that if I just like, where most people are like, oh, just keep writing right through and like go back and fix it later. I'm like, if I do that, because I've done things so meticulously, like setting up things, and I break the book, like that becomes a huge rewrite. And like I don't want to deal with that. Like I'd rather just stop writing and like think about it for a while. So maybe I'll get over that at some point, but that's been very challenging for me.
Yeah. I mean, you're a freelancer doing various different gigs. You're a father. There's all sorts of things going on. When do you even make time for writing?
Yeah, barely. I mean, that's part of the problem. Like,
Yeah.
I have a lot going on.
Yeah.
But you know, when I'm in a groove,
Hmm.
I I try to take advantage of it. Um,
Yeah.
and the best times, and I love it when I'm in like Tori Tekken's Discord.
Mm.
Tori from YouTube,
Yeah.
Tori talks, and she does writing sprints in her Discord.
Ah.
And I'm usually most productive when I'm sprinting, and I'm
Hmm.
even more productive when I'm sprinting in a group. Um, and we do a sprint, we stop, we talk for 20 minutes, do another sprint, stop and talk for 10, 15 minutes, and do another sprint, and eventually we dissipate. Like, but I'm way more productive when I feel like I'm not alone sometimes. Like, I think that camaraderie of like feeling like where I can talk to someone and say, like, oh, this character isn't working. And they're like, I don't even want them to fix it. Sometimes I just need to express that,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
having a hard time. And somebody who does the thing gets it.
Gets it.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I could complain to my wife, but she's not a writer. Like, it's different. And I
Yeah.
know she doesn't quite get it. And she tells me, like, she's like,
Right.
you know,
She's like,
um,
what do you mean? You wrote
yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I love my wife to death, but she's just that kind of person. She's much more, and I almost wish I was like that, where she just enjoys things. She's that kind of person. Obviously, she has preferences, but like she's like, I don't want to think about how this was made, like, or like it's like I either like it or I don't like it. Like, it's like that's no thank you. Like,
Yeah.
so and I get that. So, and it's fun like watching things or reading things with her, and my natural instinct is just be like, what'd you think
Pick it
about this?
apart.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and she's like, oh yeah, I liked it, it was fun. And it's like,
That's not what
not
I
you.
meant. Yeah. 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 There's like 20 other follow-ups that we need to go through. Yeah. 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 That's
So,
funny.
I've just learned that it's like she is not the person for that. I need to find my own nerdy friends to do that with and just enjoy things with her. Just enjoy it. Let it happen
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
So,
That's funny. I am often more the like, yeah, that was good. I try not to especially if it's like TV or whatever, Sometimes
yeah,
with video games though, I'll be like, oh, that's cool. The way they thought about this thing in the whatever, but yeah.
yeah. I find video games, I like to use video games as rewards when I get to like a milestone in the writing, because I can't often do more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Or if I get really stuck with writing and I just stop writing, my writing time becomes video game time.
Yeah, that has happened to me over the last few months with this game called Helldivers 2. Oh my god.
Mhm.
It's been a problem, but I'm finally
Uh,
breaking the addiction a little bit.
yeah. So yeah, I think some video games are like really cool world building
Yeah.
and maybe like really cool like gameplay loops. Like, I actually find that kind of inspiring sometimes for writing.
Yep.
So yeah.
Jim, we've been talking almost 2 hours. I think it's about time to wrap it up.
You're so much fun to talk to. It doesn't even feel like it.
I had a blast. It's been awesome. Where can folks find and follow you online? And then I know you mentioned like, hey, if they're interested in like developmental editing, but I imagine like podcast editing, YouTube editing, they can all just email you, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, the easiest way to find me is just to go to my website, jimwilbourne.com. My name is, wait, just squish those together and put .com at the end.
There you go.
And that will get you there. It has links to like all my social media, like in the corner of the page or whatever. If you want to connect with me there, there's a contact page. So do that. If you want to email me, I will email you back. So beware, I will email you back. So so yeah, if you need me for anything, if you just want to ask me a question about writing, you don't want any services, you just want to ask a question, you can do that. Let's do that.
Nice.
So yeah.
And of course, if you want to go check out, the Seventh Cadence.
Yes, exactly. My books are there. Actually, when you go to the website, you can just sign up for my mailing list and I'll send you a free story. Kind of like a little quick lead-in to kind of warm you up a little bit,
Like that.
Yeah.
And if anyone out there found a cell phone in Boston years ago, flip phone.
Yes, right. Absolutely. With Beyonce in the background of it. I'm embarrassed to say.
Totally legit. All right. Thank you, Jim. This has been wonderful. It's been so fun to kind of chat with you and get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, it's been great, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone else that's been watching. I appreciate you, those of you in the chat and everything. Feel free to give me that like and follow. Definitely appreciate it. And for all of you, everyone, Jim included, everyone else, no one's told you today. You're an absolute legend.
Yes, you are.